Life feels like it's falling apart. I don't know what I need. Advice, encouragement, or maybe just someone to listen. My main account is all memes and distractions, but I made this throwaway because I can't keep bottling this up. Life has pushed me to the brink, and I'm struggling to figure out what's right anymore. Right now, I'm sitting in a hospital room, trying to type this out on my phone. Yesterday, around 6:30 a.m., my wife, Sylvia, and I were in a car accident. I walked away with only a few cuts and bruises, but Sylvia wasn't so lucky. Her shoulder was crushed, her collarbone broken, 3 ribs fractured, and her lung collapsed. The doctors say she'll recover, but for now, she's sedated. Typing this out feels almost as hard as facing reality. Our marriage hasn't been perfect recently. I could never imagine Sylvia being unfaithful, but now, everything I thought I knew feels like a lie. Let me start from the beginning. Sylvia and I are both 34. We've known each other since we were kids and started dating in high school. She's the only woman I've ever been intimate with, and until recently, I thought the same was true for her. We married a year after college and have 2 incredible kids, Daniel, 9, and Leah, 6. They're my whole world. If not for them, I don't know how I'd keep going. The night before the accident, we were supposed to fly to Florida for a cruise. The kids were at my parents' house, safe and sound, but Sylvia decided to go out with her best friend, Elena. I told her to stay home. It was snowing heavily, but she insisted they'd just have a few drinks. When I woke up at 5 a.m., her car wasn't in the driveway. I assumed she crashed at Elena's place, so I texted her, "Don't drive in this snow. I'm coming to get you." The message was never read. By the time I got to Elena's condo, my stomach was in knots. The front door was unlocked, so I let myself in. The living room was empty, and Elena's bedroom was downstairs, but I didn't want to wake her. I headed upstairs to the guest room, figuring Sylvia would be there. When I opened the door, my world fell apart. 2 heads peeked out from under the covers. Confused and angry, I walked closer and pulled the comforter back. There was Sylvia, lying on some guy's bare chest. "What the hell is this?" I shouted, my voice shaking with disbelief. Sylvia jolted awake, her face pale. "I can explain." "Explain what?" "That you're screwing some random guy while I'm at home with our kids?" Elena came rushing up the stairs. "Calm down. It's not what you think. Not what I think." "Are you kidding me?" I yelled, my fist clenching. The guy mumbled something, and before I knew it, I was swinging at him. I don't even remember what I said or did. I just snapped. Sylvia was sobbing. "Stop it, please." She screamed, trying to pull me away from him. Elena was shouting too. "You're going to kill him. Get off." I don't know how long it lasted, but eventually, I came back to my senses. The guy was groaning, Elena was screaming at me, and Sylvia was crying her eyes out. "Get dressed and get in the car," I told Sylvia coldly. "You have 5 minutes, or don't bother coming home." She tried to explain, but I wasn't having it. "I don't want to hear it," I said, my voice flat. "You made your choice." Elena glared at me. "You need to calm down." "Calm down?" I walked in on my wife cheating on me. "Don't tell me to calm down." Sylvia grabbed her clothes, still crying. I walked out and waited by the car. 5 minutes later, she came out, her face streaked with tears. She arrived in 3. Driving angry in the snow is never a good idea, even with 4-wheel drive. But it wasn't my frustration that caused the accident. It was another vehicle veering into our lane, forcing us through the guardrail. That's how Sylvia got hurt. The car rolled. Thank God for airbags, or it could have been much worse. We survived. The kids don't even know about the wreck yet. I haven't called anyone. I probably should, but this isn't just a car accident. It feels like my entire life has crashed. I'm still trying to assess the damage before involving anyone else. I'm numb, yet I feel an unbearable pain. Not from the accident, but from everything else. The person lying in that hospital bed feels like a stranger to me. I have so many questions I want to ask her, but I'm terrified of the answers. She doesn't love me anymore. She couldn't. Not if she was capable of betraying me like this. No one with a conscience cheats on someone they truly love. And now I have to wonder, did she ever love me? Even if it were possible for her to love me again, would I want her to? I don't know the details of when the cheating started, but to me, the moment she betrayed me, our marriage ended. The vows we made were broken. She destroyed the foundation of our relationship. I don't need a divorce attorney to tell me my marriage is over. She's already made that clear. We aren't man and wife anymore. Part of me wants to leave this hospital room, call her parents, tell them everything, and let them take responsibility for her. We promised each other for better or for worse, and I meant it. But we're no longer bound by those vows, not after this. I want to leave her a note that says, "Too bad worse came after you chose to betray our marriage. The only reason I'm still sitting in this room is because of my children. I want to see them so badly right now, but my face and neck are scratched up, and they'd know something was wrong. Despite everything, they need her. As much as I feel she's defiled herself and our family, my kids deserve a mother. There will be conversations they'll need to have that I'm not equipped for, and wounds that require a mother's touch, not just a father telling them to walk it off. I'm a damn good dad, but I can't be their mom, too. I need help. How can I sit here, looking at someone who betrayed me so cruelly? Should I call her parents and ask them to come? What do I even tell them? If I don't explain what happened, they'll still sense my anger. And what about my kids? What in God's name am I supposed to tell them? I can tell the kids we were in an accident, but I'm not the kind of person who can fake emotions. My wife clearly can. It comes naturally to her. But when I feel something, it shows on my face. They'll know I'm angry with their mother. How did my life come to this? I already know I need to see a lawyer. That much is clear. But how do I handle everything else? I decided to stay one more night in that hospital room. With Sylvia sedated and the lights dimmed, I reclined in the chair, staring at the ceiling and listening to the rhythmic hum of the medical machines. I kept asking myself how my life had reached this point. Part of me felt like I was showing her undeserved mercy by even staying in the same room. And yet, another part of me still loved her. I hated feeling that love. It made me feel weak. Over and over, I realized there was no fixing this, no going back to the way things were. It felt like a natural disaster had ripped through the life we built, leaving it in ruins. I cried. I cried so damn hard. I realized that a huge part of my life was over, and there was no escaping that truth. The next morning, when a nurse came in to draw blood, I excused myself. When Sylvia woke up and saw me heading out the door, she called my name, but I pretended not to hear her. I went to grab some breakfast, though I didn't have much of an appetite, not since I found out about the affair. I tried to kill some time, picking at my food and scrolling through my phone. There was a text from Elena asking where Sylvia was, but I left it unread. By 7 a.m., I decided it was late enough to head to her parents' house. Her dad was always an early riser, and I figured I'd talk to him first. If he thought his wife needed to know, he could wake her up. When I arrived, I saw smoke coming from the wood stove in his workshop, so I knocked on the door before stepping inside. He noticed the scratches on my neck and the bruise on my cheek. I explained there had been an accident, that Sylvia had taken the brunt of it, but she was stable and expected to make a full recovery. Her dad woke my mother-in-law, so I could share the news with both of them. We sat in the kitchen as I explained what had happened. A car in the oncoming lane veered into ours while we were going around a curve. With the heavier vehicle and all-wheel drive, I managed to keep us on the road until we hit the guardrail. But the passenger side door caught one of the vertical I-beams mounted on the concrete. Even with side airbags, Sylvia hit hard and suffered significant injuries. They cried, relieved that their daughter was alive and would recover. They reassured me that they would do anything to help care for Sylvia and support me during this time. That's when I stopped them. I told them the accident wasn't the real reason I had come to talk to them. They looked confused as I began explaining how, that morning, I had sent a text before heading out in the snow to check on my wife. I told them about walking into the house and finding their daughter with a man I didn't know, and how, in that moment of blind rage, I lost control and attacked him. They were both visibly shocked. I then told them which room she was in at the hospital and explained that, despite everything, I always wanted them to be part of the kids' lives. I asked them to remain friendly with me for the sake of the children. I told them my dad was currently watching the kids, but I planned to head to his place to tell them about the accident, and also to explain that their mom and I wouldn't be together anymore. I assured them I wouldn't tell the kids the real reason, that their mother had cheated. I told my in-laws that, while I hated how things had ended, I took some solace in knowing I wasn't the one who had destroyed our marriage. They tried to convince me not to rush into divorce, saying she had made a mistake and offering the usual excuses, but I just smiled and told them how much I'd appreciated having them as in-laws over the years. Then I walked out. When I arrived at my dad's house, I felt the weight of everything I needed to get off my chest. Entering through the kitchen, I found him sitting there with a cup of coffee. All he knew was that I was supposed to be on a big boat in the Caribbean. He stood up and asked what I was doing there. Instead of answering, I grabbed him, hugged him tightly, and broke down crying like a child. He didn't push for answers. He seemed to know I needed to let it out first. He guided me to the den and sat me on the couch before going to get my mom. We urged her to have a cup of coffee first, but she already sensed something was wrong. She knew if I was there alone, that early in the morning, it wasn't good news. I started by telling them about Sylvia's infidelity, about catching her in the act and leaving Elena's house. Then I explained the accident, how serious it had been, and how Sylvia had been injured. I told them I had informed her parents an hour earlier so they could go see her. Both of my parents were stunned. My mom, through tears, finally asked what I planned to do next. I told them the only choice I had left was to divorce Sylvia and focus on being the best father I could be for my children. As our conversation was winding down, I heard my daughter, Leah, squeal, "Daddy." She came running down the stairs to hug me. Her excitement woke up my son, who soon joined us. I hadn't seen them in so long, and I spent time holding them, hugging them, and soaking in their presence. Eventually, they noticed the scratches on my face. I explained there had been a car accident, that their mom was in the hospital but would be fine. I told them Sylvia's parents would take them to see her soon and left it at that. The rest of the day, I stayed with them. I talked to them, played with them, laughed with them, and even napped with them. Those two reminded me why I had to keep going. If I'm being honest, until that moment, I'd been about 50-50 on whether I wanted to keep living. But they are worth it. Worth living for, protecting, and cherishing. Sylvia's phone had been destroyed in the accident, so no one had been able to reach her for days. That evening, I started getting texts from my mother-in-law's phone, clearly intended for Sylvia. I ignored them. The messages continued sporadically throughout the night until I finally turned off notifications. The next day, I spoke with 3 law firms about filing for divorce. It's not something I necessarily want or even need for closure, but it's necessary to divide assets and establish custody of our children. What she does with her life, or who she does it with, is no longer any concern of mine. I met with 2 of the firms that day and found the second one particularly impressive. I'll meet with the third lawyer soon to see if they stand out, but if not, I'll go with the top attorney from the second firm. Either way, I'll have removed 3 of the best legal options from her list of potential candidates, and that feels like a small victory. Custody is my main priority. I'm not aiming for full custody, nor would I want it even if I could get it. The kids need their mother in their lives. But after what she did, she'll never be a part of mine again. A go-between can handle pickups and drop-offs for the kids. There's no reason for me to have any direct interaction with her. I clearly never really knew her, so why should I keep engaging with someone who now feels like a stranger? Next week, I'll return to work after what was supposed to be our cruise. I haven't told anyone at the office that we didn't go or about the wreck. Of course, they'll notice me driving a rental car and might ask if I got a new one. I'm debating whether I need to explain anything to HR, but I'd prefer to keep my personal business private. I already feel humiliated enough without everyone knowing the details. Divorce is sometimes necessary, but it always feels like a failure. Still, I refuse to keep being an anchor for a ship that has already sunk. And for those who suggested I get tested for STDs, I did, a full screening. Thankfully, everything came back clean, but even that process made me feel dirty, like I was guilty of something when I'd done nothing wrong. I assume Sylvia has been discharged from the hospital by now. Her parents haven't tried to bring her to the house. Not that they could have contacted me anyway. I've been ignoring her constant texts. As soon as I can file the divorce papers and have her served, I'll be done with the biggest mistake of my life. Her actions invalidated everything we had. If I could do it all over again, I wouldn't. I'd choose a life with someone else. Anyone else who could be faithful and loyal. Her greatest asset was something she threw away. The ability to be trusted. What I'll miss is the idea of having someone to call my own, of not being alone. But even that was a lie. The truth is, I meant nothing to her. People tend to swoon over a beautiful lie and reject an ugly truth, but I'm not one of those people. Some have asked for the gritty details. Who she cheated with, why, and how long it had been going on. I'm sorry, but I don't have those answers, and frankly, I don't want them. There's no justification for cheating, short of someone literally holding a gun to your head. When you make a life bond with someone, you swear to uphold it. To ruin it is vile. I wish I'd never met her and had taken a chance on someone else. Anyone else who understood the value of trust and loyalty. She had no right to give me a life, and then take it all away against my will. The man I was before her betrayal is gone forever. The woman I thought she was never existed. The life I had with her was nothing more than a facade, now reduced to ruins. Ruins that no one would want to live in. I recently completed a full STD panel, and thankfully, everything came back clean. Knowing a few people in the medical field certainly has its perks. I haven't spoken a single word to Sylvia, even when sitting alone with her in the hospital room. She tried to talk to me, but her speech was slurred and garbled. I just looked at her with disgust and waited for her to pass out again. I don't have any details about who the other guy was, how many times it happened, or how long it had been going on. Sylvia's phone was destroyed in the wreck, but I think she has access to her mom's phone now because I've started receiving multiple texts from her. She can explain things to Elena or plan her next escapades for all I care. For those concerned, I haven't been drinking, so there's no risk of me getting drunk and doing something reckless. That said, after this week, I can understand why some people turn to excessive drinking or narcotics to cope. I wish I could press pause on life and forget everything for 24 hours, but the problems would still be waiting for me afterward. On the bright side, I've secured an excellent lawyer. Her firm is rated the best in the area for representing men in divorce cases. Unlike most attorneys, who might pass the case off to someone else on their team, she has taken my case personally. Everyone at the firm has been incredibly kind and supportive, making it clear they genuinely care about more than just their fees. Talia, my lawyer, has been doing everything she can to help me maintain my sanity and well-being. After agreeing to take my case, we reviewed the standard forms I needed to complete, including details about property, bank accounts, and estimates of our respective incomes. When I explained the wreck and what I witnessed just before it happened, she asked if I'd had an STD panel done. I confirmed that I had and that everything came back clean. She then asked if I had documented the infidelity with photos or videos, but I admitted that I hadn't been thinking clearly enough at the time to do that. She immediately contacted a private investigator her firm works with and set up a meeting for the next day. Since I live in an at-fault state, I'll need concrete evidence of Sylvia's infidelity for the divorce to favor me. Talia also arranged for one of her staff to act as a go-between for communication with Sylvia's dad and to coordinate drop-offs. Her aide informed my soon-to-be ex-father-in-law that Sylvia could have the kids for the upcoming weekend and the following week. Talia then asked if I'd arranged therapy for myself and the children. I explained that I had my first therapy session scheduled for this week, but I was holding off on arranging anything for the kids since they haven't been told about the situation yet. She assured me that as soon as I felt they needed professional support, she could recommend several therapists. Talia seemed genuinely sympathetic about everything I've been through and what lies ahead, which is rare for an attorney. I usually dislike lawyers, but I think I've found one who actually has a soul. She provided me with a list of tasks to complete before our next meeting, many of which mirrored advice I've seen others share online. One of her instructions was to pick up 2 DNA kits from the narcotics store, which I knew was standard protocol, so I didn't think twice about it. When I got home with the kids that night, I did the cheek swabs for myself and both of them. Once everything was sealed, I mailed the kits the next morning after dropping the kids off at school. 2 days later, on Friday, the go-between dropped the kids off with their grandfather for the weekend. That morning, I went to work as usual. While returning from lunch, I noticed 2 email notifications from the lab in my personal inbox. I waited until I got back to my desk to open them. I clicked on the first email and followed the link. The results confirmed that my son, Daniel, is indeed my biological son. Relieved, I opened the second email and clicked the link. I read it. Then I read it again. I couldn't process what I was seeing. I just sat there, shaking my head in disbelief. I knew I had to leave the office before breaking down completely, but before I did, I managed to take screenshots of both results and email them to myself. Once outside, I got to my car and broke down sobbing. The realization that my daughter, Leah, was not my biological child hit me like nothing I'd ever experienced. It felt like my soul had been ripped from me. I can't describe the pain in any other way. I didn't know who to call. I just sat in the car, crying, wishing desperately that I could wake up from this nightmare. After a while, I downloaded the files from my email and sent them as photos to my lawyer. Within seconds, Talia called. "Where are you?" she asked. "Work," I managed to say. She told me to stay put, and that someone from her firm would be there shortly. After ending the call, I opened my car door and began vomiting uncontrollably. By the time I stopped and managed to pull myself together, a paralegal had arrived to pick me up. They drove me to the firm, and as soon as Talia was done with her client, I was ushered into her office. The first thing she said was that sometimes DNA tests can be wrong. She acknowledged my pain and assured me I had every right to feel upset. However, she strongly urged me to retest Leah and me at a local lab to eliminate any chance of contamination. I couldn't believe this was happening. Even after catching Sylvia cheating, I had assumed the DNA tests were just a formality. I never imagined my wife could be unfaithful, let alone capable of having another man's child. If the results were true, I couldn't fathom who I had married. At that point, I didn't even have concrete proof to confront Sylvia. The idea of that conversation, if the results were confirmed, was unimaginable. One of the office staff took my blood pressure to make sure I wasn't in a dangerous range. It was elevated, and I felt on the verge of a panic attack Yet I was also numb, in shock, and struggling to comprehend that my little girl might not actually be mine. Thankfully, the kids were with their mom during this time. I couldn't shake the fear that both tests might be wrong, that Leah could be mine and Daniel might not. The uncertainty was unbearable. The firm's go-between arranged for Leah to be picked up the next day for a few hours. She was taken back to Sylvia's parents afterward. This time, the test was done in a sterile environment by trained medical staff to rule out any chance of error. The results came back a day later. They confirmed what I had feared most. I am not Leah's father. By then, she was already back with her mom, and I broke down crying even harder the second time. I was grateful Leah wasn't there to witness it. I sent the updated results to my lawyer, and Talia called to check on me. She urged me to reach out to family and not try to go through this alone. I got into my car and drove straight to my parents' house, crying the entire way. When I arrived, my mom immediately knew something was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to explain. All I could manage was to say, "Leah isn't my daughter." My mom froze, asking, "What?" But it was clear she had heard me correctly. I couldn't repeat it. After a long, heavy silence broken only by my uncontrollable sobbing, she stood up and grabbed her phone. She called my dad, her voice shaking as she told him to come home immediately, but to drive carefully. When he asked what was wrong, she wouldn't say, only urging him to hurry. He arrived about 20 minutes later. For hours, the three of us sat together, crying. My dad comforted me. I comforted my mom. They both tried to comfort me, but none of us could truly console one another. Eventually, they asked about Daniel, and I reassured them he was my son. They both expressed relief, but then felt guilty for being relieved about only losing one grandchild. They asked what I planned to do, but I had no answers. The only thing I knew for certain was that Leah would never want for anything. I promised she would have everything she needed and most of what she wanted. Child support didn't matter to me. I was committed to making sure she was taken care of. Despite the immense pain I was feeling, my heart broke even more for Leah, who was entirely innocent in all of this. I began to question whether I wanted custody of her, and if so, whether I could even get it. I also couldn't stop wondering whether Sylvia knew or suspected the truth all along. Suddenly, I needed answers. The following Monday, I met with Talia, my lawyer. She had also spoken with the private investigator we'd hired to follow Sylvia. Due to her accident, there hadn't been any recent evidence of infidelity, which wasn't surprising. However, Talia had asked me to bring Sylvia's old cell phone from a drawer at home. The investigator was able to retrieve nearly all her apps and messages as if accessing her destroyed phone. The evidence was overwhelming. Nude photos sent and received, explicit messages, and countless sexting conversations with various men. There was enough in those messages to convince any judge of her guilt. Talia asked if I wanted to see the pictures or read the texts. I declined, but we both knew we needed a plan for confronting Sylvia about Leah. Talia suggested we do it in her office and attempt to get Sylvia to agree to the meeting. She called Sylvia's mom's phone in front of me, and for the first time since leaving the hospital, I heard Sylvia's voice. Talia got straight to the point, explaining that Sylvia needed to meet with me to answer some questions. Sylvia said she had been waiting to talk and agreed to meet the following afternoon. That day at work was excruciating. I barely managed to hold myself together, pretending to be productive while battling waves of emotion. By lunch, I could hardly keep food down. I left work early, arriving at Talia's office ahead of time. I wanted to make sure I was there first so Sylvia would be forced to sit on the opposite side of the room, away from the door, with no chance of approaching me. While waiting, I scrolled through old photos of what I had once believed was our perfect family, a family that never really existed. When Sylvia finally arrived, she needed help walking, still in 2 casts from the accident. For a fleeting moment, I thought she might be exaggerating for sympathy, but the wreck had been serious. At least I didn't have to worry about her attempting to hug me. I urged her to sit so we could get started. Once we were seated, water was offered, and the meeting began. Talia asked Sylvia if she was okay with the conversation being recorded, and Sylvia agreed. As soon as the recording started, Sylvia tried to apologize, but I cut her off. Without hesitation, I asked her bluntly, "How many men did you cheat on me with, and when did it start?" There was more than enough evidence from the private investigator to confirm that the man I caught her with wasn't the first by a long shot. Sylvia, of course, didn't know the extent of what we knew, and it seemed her strategy was to admit only to what she thought was already exposed. I asked her again, trying to keep my composure, "Roughly how many men have you slept with since Daniel was born?" That specific time frame seemed to throw her off for a moment, but she continued playing dumb, pretending she didn't understand. It was clear she still thought this was some kind of game, and my patience was wearing thin. Sensing my frustration, Talia gently placed her hand on my shoulder, urging me to sit back and let her handle it. Talia then turned to Sylvia and calmly asked, "Is he a good father?" Sylvia immediately sang my praises, saying I was an amazing dad and that she couldn't have asked for anyone better to raise her children. The way she emphasized her children made me want to flip the table in rage. Talia, unbothered by Sylvia's theatrics, followed up with a pointed question. "And what about the other father of her child? Do you think he'll be a good dad too?" Sylvia, confused, asked what she meant by other father. In response, Talia slid the paternity results for Leah across the table. I needed to be there to witness her reaction in person, despite how much I hated the situation my life had become since discovering her infidelity. Sylvia's shock was evident. She stammered out something about me being the father who raised Leah, but I cut her off immediately. "Who is Leah's biological father?" I asked, my voice breaking. Sylvia lowered her gaze, clearly ashamed, and admitted that she didn't know for certain. That was the moment I truly broke down, unable to hold back my tears. Seeing me in such pain, Sylvia started crying too and begged to explain. She brought up the postpartum depression she experienced after Daniel was born, reminding me of how hard those days had been for her. I remembered it all vividly. I had done everything I could to support her, spending every spare moment caring for Daniel so she could rest and recover. Some days, she couldn't even get out of bed, and I had laid the weight of caring for our entire family. I had even foolishly believed that surviving that difficult time had made our relationship stronger. But apparently, I was wrong. Sylvia didn't try to shift the blame onto her best friend, Elena, but she admitted that Elena had encouraged her to go out for a few girls' nights. At first, I had felt relieved, even grateful, that she was reconnecting with her friend after so much time apart. But then Sylvia confessed that on their second night out, she got very drunk and performed BJ on a stranger. She said she felt guilty for a while, but that guilt eventually turned into resentment. Resentment that she wasn't free to be young and carefree, to be with whomever she wanted. That resentment, she admitted, led her to start hooking up with different men whenever she went out with Elena. This continued for years, right up until the night before the car accident. She claimed she never stayed out late or missed coming home, and that she made a point of not developing feelings for any of the men. She swore she always used protection and never slept with the same man more than 3 times. "It was just sex," she said, as if that would make it easier for me to stomach. I sat there, utterly stunned, as the reality of what she had done sank in. It felt like my entire life had been a cruel, unscripted reality show I never agreed to join. I wanted to scream at her, but instead, I found myself mentally calculating how many men she might have been with over the years. Talia, staying composed, asked if she had any idea who Leah's father might be. Sylvia insisted she had always assumed Leah was mine. My lawyer then pointed out that something clearly went wrong at some point, suggesting perhaps a protection had broken. That's when Sylvia admitted that it had happened, a few times, with a few different men. I completely lost it. I demanded to know who the hell she was because the person telling me all these terrible things seemed like a stranger, speaking so casually, like she was asking me to pass the salt. I asked her when she started hating me, when I had ever done anything to deserve being treated like this. I asked her how she could do this to our daughter. I was seething with anger. She sat there, knowing everything I was saying was true, and just took it all in. After everything she had confessed, the idea of a marriage was long gone. What was once a union was now a wasteland. All that was left was to tally the damage. I'd lost a wife and a daughter, 2 people. She lost a husband, that's 3. Our daughter lost a father, and a brother saw his sister become a stranger. Then there were the grandparents, the in-laws. Sylvia's actions had torn apart 2 entire families. Her parents would never forgive her, and I vowed I'd make sure they saw every piece of evidence the PI uncovered. Sylvia admitted to meeting men from dating apps with Elena, using their girls' nights as a cover for hookups. She claimed she never meant to hurt me and swore she didn't know Leah wasn't mine. Honestly, I believed her on that front because I didn't know either, but DNA doesn't lie. I asked her why she didn't just divorce me if things were so bad. She answered, bluntly and tearfully, that she didn't want to lose the security I had given her. Everything she said was punctuated by tears, but my face showed nothing but scorn. I was disgusted by the woman sitting across from me. I felt used, humiliated, emasculated, defeated. It was clear to me that one of the reasons she wanted to talk without a lawyer was because I held all the power in this situation. She didn't have much to lose, just a small 401k and a few assets. Nothing compared to what I'd brought into the marriage. I'd inherited my grandfather's estate when I was 14, so I had financial stability even before I married. The woman I've always called my mother isn't my biological mother. She stepped into that role after my mother passed when I was 2. I knew from a young age that she wasn't my biological mother, and I later learned that she couldn't have children of her own. Raising me was her way of experiencing motherhood. When my biological grandfather passed, what was left to him was passed on to me, but I couldn't touch it until I turned 21. I'd worked hard to get my education, but I didn't have to struggle financially like many others. Sylvia knew all of this, and she knew I would wipe the floor with her in the divorce. She wouldn't get anything close to half, not after everything she had done. She has a job, but she's unable to work right now because of her injuries. Part of me wanted to punish her, but another part just wanted to be done with her. Maybe the painkillers Sylvia was on had something to do with how blunt she was, but her words hit me hard, and my mind only made them worse. I asked her if she felt any shame. She claimed she did. I then asked how we were going to find out who Leah's real father was. Sylvia started with some philosophical nonsense about already knowing who the father was. I wasn't in the mood for that. Whoever Leah's father is, he has the right to know, and she deserves to know about his family for health reasons. The evidence the PI had uncovered only scratched the surface. I asked Sylvia if she could find any of those men, or if she had saved their numbers. She had the audacity to say that the point of losing their numbers was so she'd never see them again. It made me sick. How could I have been so blind? I told her that maybe she should have kept their numbers to inform them that they were going to be fathers, or, at the very least, to let them know if she got an STD. I want my name off Leah's birth certificate. The DNA test proves she's not my child, and I will no longer be listed as her father. I'll continue to support her financially, but that will be out of my own choice, not obligation, well beyond the age of 18. She'll never want for anything. As for my son, Daniel, and custody, I'm unsure of what to do. Before the paternity test, I was leaning toward a 90-10 arrangement, giving Sylvia custody one weekend a month and certain holidays. But now that Leah isn't mine, I don't feel right about pursuing custody of her, even if I could. I'm not sure what that would do to Daniel either. He's her half-brother, and I don't want to tear them apart. I don't want either of them to suffer, but I haven't seen Leah since the test results came in, and I can't let her see me break down over it. God knows how much her therapy is going to cost, but I'll pay for it, even if I'm unsure whether her biological father will be able to. My own therapy isn't going to be cheap either, but I'll find a way to pay for it. On the drive home after the meeting, a part of me just wanted to end it all. It seemed like the best solution for everyone, except for me. Both families could go on pretending everything was fine. Sylvia could keep living her life, using my grandfather's money, while the kids wouldn't have to deal with the fallout of a broken marriage. But by the time I got home, I told myself, forget that. Talia is already drawing up divorce papers, and we're working on legal paperwork to have me declared not Leah's father. This will take time, but I don't want any legal ties to children who aren't mine. The legal team is researching ways to uncover Leah's real father. Many ancestry websites suggest potential relatives when results come back, and that's our first step. Even if the results don't point directly to one person, they might identify a cousin, brother, or another relative. Whoever the man is, he might not be ready to accept a child he didn't know existed, but I doubt that would cause him the same pain I've felt, losing a daughter I thought was mine, only to find out she never was. Everything is in chaos right now, and I feel like nothing is stable. The kids come back to the house Sunday afternoon, and for the first time, I don't even want to see them. I know there will be many things I won't be prepared for. When Leah comes running to hug her daddy, I'm not sure how I'll react. Do I hug her and cry, knowing she's not mine? Do I tell her I'm not the person she's looking for? I can't be mean to her, but my heart is broken in a way that feels impossible to heal. I have no one to direct this pain at, not even Sylvia, because nothing short of murder could even come close to balancing the scale of betrayal she's put me through. She used me, then threw me away, and I can't help but wish she would rot in hell for her lies and promiscuity. I feel destroyed, and everything I once loved feels broken beyond repair. I will win this divorce. Talia and the legal team will make sure it's the most lopsided division of assets ever, but it doesn't even matter anymore. Sylvia has already stripped so much value from my life that it feels like she's won again. To hell with her. I'm left with a son, and I know my soon-to-be ex-wife will try to manipulate him against me. Some people truly are horrible, and they deserve to be treated like an animal. I made the mistake of having a child with someone like her, and now I see that I wasn't the only one who made a foolish decision. To sum it up, my soon-to-be ex-wife has been hooking up with random men since our first child was born. I found out that the daughter we had together isn't mine, and Sylvia doesn't know who the father is. Parenting seems to be a strange mix of selfishness and selflessness. The intern from the law firm, Jessica, texted me at 3 p.m. Sunday to let me know she had the kids in the car with their belongings and was on her way. I doubt there's ever been a more dreaded text message than that one for anyone. What made it even worse was that just a few weeks ago, I would have smiled eagerly at the text, excited to see the kids again. But now, I dreaded it. I had no intention of bringing up the divorce, paternity, or any of the issues with the kids. I just wanted things to feel normal, like when they stayed with their grandparents while Sylvia and I were on vacation. But I knew that wouldn't be possible, and I had little control over any of it. Jessica pulled into the driveway, and I watched from the front window as the car stopped. I walked outside, smiling, trying to hold it together as I approached the passenger side. When I saw Leah in her car seat, beaming up at me with that big smile, I started crying. I couldn't help it. The smile never left my face, though. I kept hoping that if I smiled long enough, maybe the kids and I would believe everything was okay. As soon as I could, I grabbed Leah and Daniel out of the car, hugging them tightly. I told them how much I missed them, but that was all I could manage. I just kept crying. Part of the loss I'm feeling is mourning the family unit we once had, knowing that it's gone now. My heart is broken, seeing them and realizing that Leah isn't mine. Every single day feels like a new heartbreak. Learning more about Sylvia's cheating, discovering more pain I can't shield the kids from, and being reminded that everything I thought was real was built on lies. Jessica was a godsend, helping me get the kids into the house. I carried all their belongings in, feeling like a pack mule, and as soon as I dropped their bags on the floor, I turned to see Leah looking at me. She didn't say anything, just looked up at me with those eyes. Eyes that seemed to understand I was the one who needed comfort. I knelt down, and she walked into my arms, wrapping herself around me as tightly as she could. That moment broke me. I wanted to be strong, but no child should ever see their parent cry like that. Everyone keeps insisting that I do what causes the least harm to my kids, and while that seems logical, I can't help but wonder, what if everything causes harm? What if there's no way to protect them from the damage? Allowing her to see the source of her strength and security crumble must be hurting her too, right? How could it not? If I abandoned her, it would destroy her. But by staying in her life, I know I'm still causing her harm. A 6-year-old shouldn't have to comfort a grown man, especially for something that isn't her fault. In that moment, my soul burned with rage towards Sylvia, but that little girl, the one she lied about being mine, showed me love the only way she knew how. She kept hugging me. The undeniable truth I realized then is that she and I are both victims. As the adult, I'm supposed to handle it better, but she doesn't even know she's been victimized yet. In many ways, it's like we're the only survivors of a plane crash. We made it out, but the scars will stay with us forever. We're survivors, and we need to stick together. We need to be there for each other because we're going through the same thing, even though our perspectives are very different. In that moment, I was feeling the loss, but I was also sparing her some of the pain by taking it upon myself. I had been looking at it as if Sylvia took my daughter from me, but it's just as true to say Sylvia took her father from her. Sylvia is the villain in this story. I'm done feeling guilty for anything I feel right now. There's no handbook for dealing with paternity shock, and I'm tired of people telling me how I should feel. Nobody can tell me how to react when I find out the daughter I raised isn't mine. The only comparison I can make is when parents find out their children were switched at birth. That couple was deceived just like I was. They both have to face the truth that the child they thought was theirs was actually from another couple. Unless you've been through this, you can't understand what it feels like. After about half an hour, I managed to pull myself together. Jessica left after a hug from all three of us, and I handed her a small envelope with $500 inside, telling her it was for gas. I knew she drove an EV, but she knew it wasn't for that. I carried Leah around in my arms as Daniel showed me some of the things he'd helped his grandfather make. Leah kept her arms around my neck, making sure I knew she'd helped stain some wood. I played along with their game, pretending I didn't believe them, which quickly turned into a tickle fight. Seeing Leah's laughter and Daniel's joy brought some light to my broken soul, even though I knew the future held very little of that kind of happiness. They teamed up to wrestle me, and I enjoyed seeing them work together, even if it was against me. By the time she's old enough to date, I'll make sure she knows how to say no with confidence. I put on some music, knowing Leah's loved it since she was a baby. I've danced with her from the moment she was born, and even though I probably look goofy, I don't care. I enjoy it, and she loves acting as silly as I do. We ordered takeout for dinner. We might not be Asian, but we sure eat like it. Daniel is a pro at cooking lo mein, and for some reason, Leah loves crab rangoon. I didn't eat much. My appetite has been all over the place. but I just savored the moment of having dinner with them again. They both had school the next day, so I got them bathed, into their pajamas, and ready for bed. Daniel likes to read a book before settling down, and I gave him a hug, telling him I loved him and I'd see him in the morning. I tucked Leah into bed and read her a story, pointing out things in the illustrations. She was almost asleep, and I felt myself welling up with tears. I kissed her on the head and told her, "I love you." For the first time since finding out, I let myself say it. Call me whatever you want. But saying those words felt like letting myself admit the truth, that everything in my life has been one struggle after another. Lately, I've been struggling to figure out what's real and what isn't. My love for Leah, though, that's real. I do love her, even if everything feels different now. Right or wrong, I still love her. It's strange, but I went from not wanting to take anything away from her to a place where I only want to give. It's a massive shift. I guess I was waiting for Leah to tell me she loved me, even though I already knew she did, without her saying it. But instead, she took a moment to say, "Mommy loves you." I knew what she meant, but I asked her sweetly why she said that. She told me it was what Mommy had said, so I gently asked if Mommy just said it, or if she told her to say it. It seemed like Sylvia had explained why I hadn't visited, or wouldn't be coming over. She had even told the kids that her parents' house was now her new home, which in some way was a relief for me. But there was still this "I love you" business that I had to understand. I asked a bit more, and then Daniel came in. He told me that Mommy had said I wouldn't be coming home because I didn't love her anymore. I didn't know how to respond to that. I couldn't just say, "Yes, I just fell out of love with your mom," because that wasn't the truth. It was on me to keep things from getting worse. So, I called the usual sitter and asked if she could come over for a few hours to watch the kids while they were already in bed. She agreed. I then drove straight to my in-laws' house. I didn't call ahead. I just knocked and asked to see Sylvia. Her mom led me to her childhood room where she was recovering from her injuries. I told her mom that Sylvia and I needed to talk, and she quickly left the room, sensing my anger. Once the door was closed, I didn't hold back. I demanded to know why she was trying to blame our split on the fact that I couldn't love her anymore. She claimed it was the truth. I told her it might be true, but the real reason I couldn't love her anymore was because she'd lied, deceived, and betrayed me. She tried to apologize, but I wasn't having it. I asked her what good an apology would do now. It wouldn't fix the damage, and it wouldn't stop it from happening again. And I honestly didn't believe she was truly sorry for what she'd done. I asked her how she could manipulate two innocent children into thinking I was the bad guy. I wanted to know when I became the villain in this story, the one who destroyed our marriage. She answered without hesitation, saying it was when I didn't give her a second chance. I couldn't help myself. I asked her how much pain medication she was on and if she was drinking with it. That was the only explanation I could think of for why she thought a deceitful, manipulative person like herself deserved a second chance. I told her she had lost all that respect by her own actions, and I didn't even recognize the woman I married anymore. It was like someone else had taken over. Like she had become a totally different person, someone I didn't know at all. She said her actions weren't just about sex, that there had been a need for validation as well. I reminded her that she had claimed she wanted no emotional involvement. She snapped back, frustrated when I asked how she could justify calling herself chaste. Actions have consequences, and she was going to have to live with the fact that her choices affected how others would see her for the rest of her life. The conversation stretched on for hours. She talked about how, after having Daniel, she fell into depression. She even told me that I had been the best, most supportive husband she could have asked for, and I had to ask her why she would betray me so brutally. She said that despite the joy of having Daniel, there had always been a part of her that felt so overwhelmed with anxiety that she wanted to die. She admitted she had love for me and Daniel, but for some reason, she felt dead inside. She stayed out of work for 6 months due to her emotional struggles, and I did everything I could, getting her the best doctors, treatments, and support money could buy. Yet none of it stopped her from doing the things she did. She admitted as much and told me that even the guilt of what she was doing started to weigh on her. She felt like she was letting me down because I was carrying us, even though she knew she wasn't shouldering any of the burden. She began doubting if she could ever be the mother she had always wanted to be. She withdrew from her friends, both in person and online. Every day, she told me she loved me and apologized, but I told her she had nothing to apologize for. I just wanted her to get better. I started to wonder if maybe she was apologizing for what she was about to do. Then Elena showed up at our house unannounced. I was relieved to see her. I knew Elena was bold enough to not be pushed away and kind enough to get Sylvia to open up. Even so, it took months before anything that resembled a night out happened. Just getting Sylvia to go to Starbucks was considered a victory at the time. I know there were a lot of guys who probably thought I was a fool for letting my wife go to bars and clubs with a single girlfriend. Most of the time, they would have been right, and I should have stopped it much sooner. But in that moment of sadness and isolation, getting her out and about seemed to lift her spirits. Even after just the first time, I could see that it made a difference. Sylvia tried to explain that in a span of 2 years, she had suddenly become both a wife and a mother. She said that seeing how thirsty men were for her, even if it was just for sex, boosted her ego. She claimed that the first time it happened, it was because she had been so drunk, but it happened willingly. Once it did, she knew I'd never touch her again if I found out, and she knew she'd lose everything. I asked her if she ever thought I'd find out about her cheating, and how she thought I'd react if I did. She said she knew it would destroy me, and that she felt horrible about it. I asked why she continued to cheat, and she claimed that as soon as she sobered up, she felt nothing but guilt, shame, and regret. I don't remember her being really sad for a week after that first time, but when Elena came over the next time, they spent hours talking alone. After that, for months, I had the old Sylvia back. She revealed to me that she had told Elena that day she felt unworthy of me because of what she had done. She knew that if I found out, we'd be done, and that I would go after Daniel. She said she decided to take it to the grave and just try to be the best wife she could be in every way to make it up to me. Looking back, that should have been a red flag, but at the time, I thought it was a miracle. We had a baby to look after, and I was doing most of the caregiving. I had my wife back, and I was so relieved that I didn't see it for what it was. Within 2 weeks, I was back working part-time, then full-time once Sylvia was settled into being a stay-at-home mom. Looking back, the time just before and after Daniel turned 1 were some of the happiest of our lives, at least, for me. To later find out that those happy memories were built on the lie of her trying to make up for blowing a stranger in her car was devastating. It forever altered how I viewed those memories. I asked her why she cheated again if I wasn't enough for her. We always had a great sex life, at least that's how I thought it was. She had always acted like she enjoyed being with me. She said that the longer she kept the secret, the worse she felt about herself. But after Daniel was born, she couldn't show me how she felt. She knew that if I saw her sadness, I'd want to comfort her, but she couldn't tell me. She said the internal struggle of keeping the secret while trying to live a life of happiness was overwhelming. When I went to a reunion of my biological mother's family out of state, I took Daniel along to introduce him to my relatives for the first time. At the last minute, Sylvia canceled, claiming she was ill. I couldn't have stopped her from cheating at that point, that was already done. But maybe I could have kept her from heading down a path that led to years of deception. The fact that something I cherished was never truly mine was hard to accept. I wasn't blaming myself, but she should have been on that plane. In fact, she should have confessed to her infidelity long before that and let me move on with my life. But instead, multiple mistakes, compounded by lies and little regard for the consequences, became my burden to carry. That's something you do to an enemy, not someone you claim to have loved. She came up with a story about being so depressed that weekend, saying she felt unworthy, even if I didn't. She rationalized that she was punishing herself, even though I didn't know. She felt she deserved it. She knew that if I found out, I'd see her as a 304 and be disgusted with her. I never stopped showing love, telling her how much I cared, but she said that at some point, she realized that if I knew the truth, I wouldn't love her. The attention I had once shown her didn't matter anymore. It didn't carry the same weight because she believed she was unworthy of it, and if I knew about her betrayal, I would have realized it too. She told me that she called Elena for support, who encouraged her to go out for drinks. According to Sylvia, she spent the first part of the night crying, asking what she should do. The bartender bought her a few shots to help her cheer up, and Elena nudged her toward flirting with him. Sylvia ended up kissing the guy in a back alley behind the bar, but she stopped herself. She returned inside, feeling even worse because she realized she had cheated again. After more alcohol, Elena needed help getting Sylvia inside, so she asked the guy, who had just kissed my wife, to leave. The situation didn't end there, and they went further. I asked Sylvia if she ever thought of Daniel or considered me as she betrayed us both. She got angry and told me she never betrayed her son. I let her know that not only had she betrayed me and Daniel, but she also betrayed Leah, our families, everyone who had witnessed our vows, and God. She betrayed the sanctity of our marriage. I stopped myself and just shook my head. Despite everything, I told her that she should have just let me go. I would have looked after Daniel, and she could have slept around the entire state after we divorced, for all I cared. But she didn't. She kept lying, kept cheating. Hearing the details disgusted me. She had an actual strategy after the first few guys. She didn't want them getting attached. She wasn't looking for emotional connections. She called it fishing. She'd get a guy's number, give a little attention, then pull back and make them pursue her on her terms. When she told me she knew I thought she was beautiful and that getting second opinions didn't seem like a bad thing at the time, I just looked at her and shook my head. Anyway, the bartender is definitely not Leah's father. That much is clear. He was too early in the timeline to be the one. She claims they only hooked up once, but I asked if she could remember the names of the guys she had been talking to. She could only recall a couple of first names, and that was enough to end the conversation for the night. I wanted more answers, but I wasn't going to get them all in one night, and that wasn't what I came for. She sat in a chair, her cast propped up on pillows, and I got down close to her face. I told her she was a pitiful excuse for a human being, and that I truly believed she had no soul. I told her that her actions had caused immeasurable pain, and they would continue to do so. But I looked her squarely in the eyes and told her that I was done letting her hurt my children. I made it clear that I had been the one deceived for 6 years, and if anyone was going to focus on their own needs moving forward, it was going to be me. But I told her, and I meant every word, that petty games and manipulation would only make me loathe her even more. We weren't ever getting back together. I was disgusted by the thought of her even touching me. Loyalty wasn't in her vocabulary, but no matter what, I was going to be loyal to Leah. I was going to protect her as much as I could. If that meant protecting her from her mother's lies, manipulations, and deceit, then so be it. I told Sylvia that Talia has friends who would love to help get her declared an unfit mother, and I meant every word of it. It was a threat, and I wasn't backing down. She could say whatever she wanted to say to me directly, but I would never again allow Daniel or Leah to relay her words. Leah would know as little as possible about the details of our divorce and paternity. When the time came, I would be the one to tell her the truth. I'd explain how her mother victimized both of us, but we survived together. There was no way I would let the person who destroyed so much of our lives downplay it or blame me for any of it. That horrible truth wouldn't be shared anytime soon, at least not until I felt the time was right, and I'd decide when that would be. I pointed out that she didn't have a lawyer, and I let her know that the kids would be staying with me for at least the next 2 weeks. She needed time to reflect on her betrayal and her cruel manipulation, which was only going to hurt Leah. I made it clear that I'd let her know when she earned the right to be a mother again. There wasn't much she could do. She was in 2 castes, and I had the kids. Let her live with her loneliness for a while. On the drive home, I kept wishing I had somehow known how everything would turn out. This is the hardest struggle of my life, and I hope it remains the hardest. But so much has been destroyed. The sham marriage I've been living in needs to be dismantled, ground into dust, and buried. Still, there's no reason to hurt a little girl who doesn't know about the battle between her mother and me. I want to protect her from all of it. The kids cannot see Sylvia and me in the same room. The entire atmosphere is filled with toxic venom. I won't expose them to that. I will not fight in front of them, but I will not hesitate to put Sylvia in her place and call out any lies. I'm sorry this is so long, but every decision I make feels like it has 1,000 consequences. I want everyone to understand. Hurting Leah is the last thing I want to do, and I'm committed to fighting for her. I don't know how all this will end, but Leah and I were both betrayed by the same person. I won't let her mother damage her the way she's damaged me. It's not happening. No other man is going near my daughter until I allow it. If that day ever comes, I'll check the guy's background and make the decision myself. For now, Daniel, Leah, and I are weathering this storm together. I've done my best to shield them from the worst of it, and I will continue to protect them from as much fallout as possible. But I know our hearts will bleed a little before this is over. This destruction could have been avoided, but now that the bomb has gone off, there's no turning back. I regret going to confront Sylvia. I should have at least recorded the conversation. I like to think her parents wouldn't take her side if she tried accusing me of abuse that night, but she's their daughter. As far as we know, they're disgusted by what she's done and disappointed in how she's disrupted their grandchildren's lives. But at the end of the day, their loyalty is to her, and I need to remember that moving forward in everything I do. I realize it's time to talk to her parents and explain the divorce. I'm going to need help doing that, but I'm ready to face it. I didn't even have to make the appointment myself. She had her staff call and set it up for Thursday after school. It's going to be tough. They'll cry, and so will I. The first goal is to let them know that Sylvia and I are done. The second goal is to make sure they understand that none of this is their fault. Nothing they did caused any of it. Finally, I need them to understand that this mess isn't my fault either. Right or wrong, I need to present myself in the right light to them and everyone else. I can't let Sylvia be the sole one shaping how this all gets perceived by the kids and others. As for Elena, Thank God I haven't seen her since that awful morning. I'm sure she's still in the background, staying in touch with Sylvia, probably thinking she's just supporting her best friend. It makes my blood boil to think about it. I'm all about loyalty, but when you're loyally helping someone cheat, deceive, and lie without regard for the victims, that's not loyalty. It's enabling. Part of me wonders if Elena has any remorse for her part in this. I shouldn't care, and at the end of the day, I don't. But I can't wrap my head around how someone can help destroy families and still sleep at night. I couldn't do it, but then again, I have a conscience and integrity. Everyone is to blame for where Sylvia is right now, except for herself. She never wanted to make these choices. She just didn't see any other way. I swear, in all the years I've known Sylvia, she never showed narcissistic traits until recently, always pointing fingers at others, trying to deflect the focus from her own wrongdoings. She's more manipulative than I ever realized. Is it possible to become a narcissist as an adult, or is there such a thing as a temporary narcissist? To many, I probably seem naive or gullible, but the person Sylvia is now isn't the one I once knew. The easy thing would be to say I never really knew her, but that wouldn't be true. In hindsight, I see that things started changing after Daniel was born. Looking back, I think postpartum depression may have been the turning point that led us down this road. I've asked myself over and over how I could have treated her differently during that time to change the outcome. Should I have been tougher with her? Should I have forced her to face reality? I had options, but I clearly made the wrong choices in how I dealt with her. Even today, as everything settles, I'm still unsure what better options there were. I was there for her and Daniel whenever they needed me, and I know I could have done things differently, but I don't know what would have made the difference. As for my plans moving forward, I know I need to stick with my therapy and be as open and honest with my thoughts and feelings as possible. This isn't something I can just brush off or walk away from. The next step is to get the kids into therapy, both individually and with me. I'm not trying to repair the relationship between Sylvia and the kids, that's on her. My focus is on making sure Leah doesn't end up like her mother. I'm not going to try to make her hate her mom, but I'm also not going to sugarcoat the truths that come to light as things unfold. I've decided to get my name off Leah's birth certificate, and last night, I made the decision to seek primary custody. Sylvia has a long recovery ahead of her, with physical therapy and possibly more surgeries. While she's recovering, she won't be able to take care of the kids, and her parents are currently responsible for them until the divorce and custody arrangements are finalized. I'll have custody in the meantime, and I'm not apologizing for that. No lawyer she or her parents can afford will be able to match Talia and the team I've got behind me. If I have to destroy Sylvia to keep her from destroying Leah, I'm prepared to do it. As for my personal state, my appetite has been non-existent for obvious reasons. I'm a big guy, but not fat. I tried going to the gym with a coworker last week, but it just felt too monotonous. One of the trainers told me about a group he leads every Monday morning. It's a session where you get outside and do all sorts of intense physical activities. Flipping tractor tires, whipping ropes, doing sprints, crunches, you name it. It sounds like hell, but honestly, it also sounds like exactly what I need right now. I can't take my anger out on a dumbbell, but flipping a huge tire sounds like a great way to channel my rage. It makes sense to fight this anger in a way that feels right. I promised the trainer I'd commit to 4 straight weeks, every Monday, and go from there. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll break after 15 minutes, or maybe I'll end up launching that tractor tire into orbit. We'll find out. But seriously, thank you. I've received solid advice from others too, and it's comforting to know people care, especially about the kids. It feels like I have support, even from those who are far away. I have family and friends who've been there for me, but it's tough when they have a personal stake in things. They can't always be fully objective. So, I really appreciate you taking the time to say what I needed to hear and validating what I already knew. The gloves are off, and I'm in full Papa Bear mode now. As for Sylvia and her friend Elena, I can't help but see them as deceitful and harmful. Elena's actions, in particular, are just beyond comprehension. I'm not afraid to expose the truth. Both of them have shown they never learned not to push people too far. It's clear now, they've made their choices. This whole ordeal is teaching me something crucial. We can't let others change who we are. We can't live in darkness. We need the light to guide us forward. It's easy to be tempted by anger or revenge after infidelity, but seeking vengeance just keeps that anger alive. It traps you in negativity and prevents you from moving forward. It's a temporary fix, and in the long run, it doesn't bring any healing. Infidelity takes a toll on you emotionally and physically, and in this time, it's important to take care of yourself and protect your peace. The real freedom we have in situations like this is the freedom to choose our attitude. It's vital to remember that, Even when everything feels chaotic and out of control, we can control how we react. Our emotions might feel overwhelming, and it's scary to think our lives won't turn out the way we thought, but the key is to change our perspective. Instead of being consumed by fear, we need to find meaning in something else. I know what I want to convey when all is said and done, but it's hard to talk about any one part of this without it spilling over into other areas of my life. This might sound disjointed, and I apologize, but this will be a long read, because the life I had feels like a distant dream now. The best way I can describe it is like being cast into a reality show I didn't sign up for, with Sylvia, Daniel, Leah, and me. None of us knew what we were a part of until it all came crashing down. The show got canceled, the truth was revealed, and we're left with the harsh reality. It's hard not to think about how happy I was in my old life, but now that I know it was all built on lies, I wouldn't want to go back to it. It was all a facade, and I'm finally seeing things for what they truly were. The most significant update I need to share is that I am no longer legally Leah's father. Although I have never been her biological father, my name has officially been removed from her birth certificate. Since Sylvia and I are still married, I am now considered Leah's stepfather, which feels strange to say. Once the divorce is finalized, I will have no legal relationship with her, and she won't have one with me. What should have taken about 2 months ended up taking 4, as the divorce process had to be factored in. My name had to be removed from her birth certificate in order to proceed with the divorce legally. While I had every right to have my name removed, it was ultimately up to a judge to decide if that was in Leah's best interest. The court system prioritizes child support obligations, but when it comes to removing names from legal documents, that seems to be a secondary consideration. I was willing to show the judge that I would continue to provide health and supplemental insurance for Leah, something many men in my situation wouldn't, or couldn't, do, but I felt it was important to maintain some responsibility. Despite my willingness to help, the process felt fundamentally unfair, and it's frustrating that such decisions are left up to the courts. When I first learned that Leah wasn't my biological daughter, it emotionally shattered me in ways I couldn't even express. I had to be careful about how I handled the situation. Letting my emotions guide me would have been disastrous, so I approached the matter with logic. I couldn't let love for Leah or hatred for Sylvia influence my decisions. Legally, I had the right to cut ties with both of them, as neither one was truly mine. However, morally, I couldn't allow Leah to suffer financially because of her mother's actions. I couldn't let her think that anything her mother did was her fault. Ultimately, after much soul-searching, I realized that both Leah and I were victims of Sylvia's choices. Sylvia stripped me of my agency when she cheated, never telling me that she no longer loved me, or never had. She kept the truth from me, that she was unfaithful, conceived a child with someone else, and had me raise that child for 6 years as my own. Leah never had a choice in who her father would be, nor did she get to voice her feelings about what Sylvia did to us both. It was cruel, and I wanted to give us both a voice. The day after my name was removed from Leah's birth certificate, I began pursuing a legal petition to adopt her as my own, something I had planned on doing all along. Once I was sure that seeing Leah wouldn't be a constant reminder of her mother's betrayal, I knew I had to face her again. I couldn't know for certain how I'd feel until I saw her face to face. After learning that she wasn't my biological daughter, I had to know whether it would feel like a slap in the face, just like when I discovered Sylvia's infidelity. If it had, I wouldn't have been able to go through with it. People might think I'm wrong for feeling this way. Someone even called it fragile masculinity when I expressed my doubts about how I would react. But the reality is, I had every legal right to cut ties with both Sylvia and Leah. I wasn't in the wrong for that. However, I didn't abandon them. The fact that I kept Daniel in my life, knowing he's Leah's brother and that she loves him, did influence my decisions, and I don't pretend otherwise. Leah is not my biological daughter, but I'm still her father, and I want her to remain a part of my life. I needed to legally set the record straight to open up possibilities for the future, even if it seemed like pointless legal steps to get back to where I started. My marriage was a lie, and my relationship with Sylvia was built on deception, probably from day one. What I truly want is a do-over, the chance to choose a different woman who might be faithful and loyal. But I can't go back. I can't know what could have been. I can only face the reality of what I have now, which is raising my children in a situation I never imagined. The kids will be too young to understand the details of their mother's betrayal for a long time, but I want them, especially Leah, to know my struggle to keep everything together for their sake. I want Leah to understand that, as much as I despise her mother, I gave her the choice to decide if she wanted me as her father. When the judge asks her if she wants me to adopt her, I want her to say yes without hesitation. Years from now, she will realize that, Just like she had the option to choose, I chose her. Leah and I were thrown together by circumstances beyond our control, but we both had the chance to walk away, and I'm choosing to be her father. That choice is what makes our bond stronger than blood. There are people in my family I'd rather not be related to, but I didn't have a say in that. Leah and I chose each other, and she knows I love her, always. It's been incredibly hard just getting through one day at a time, with the emotional toll draining me. But I've also thought a lot about how I want the kids to perceive this situation when they're older. When they learn the truth about their mother, how I caught her cheating, and everything I uncovered. I want them to feel disgusted by her actions when they understand how I raised Leah, even though I didn't know her anything. I want Leah to feel gratitude when she realizes her mother's betrayal could have destroyed everything, but I held it together for them. I want them to understand the sacrifice I made to keep them stable. I won't allow any lies or revisionist history to be told in the future. I know the truth about Sylvia, and eventually, the kids will know that too. When they do, I hope they'll make their own decisions about their relationship with her. For me, I've removed Sylvia from my life completely, and I'll continue to live my life with the kids at the forefront of my mind. What happens to Sylvia is no longer my concern. The kids are all that matter now. A lot of people have asked me how I handled Sylvia telling the kids we could never get back together because I could never love her again. The very next day, after school, I took them out for ice cream at a local park. Daniel seemed to accept the fact that I didn't love their mom anymore, but I hated seeing it. Leah, on the other hand, didn't like hearing that I didn't love her mom, and telling her that her mom didn't really love me didn't help. There was a lot of crying and confusion, but I made sure to reassure them that their mom genuinely loves them, and that I love them more than anything in this world. I told them they needed to face the reality none of us had asked for. I told them I knew they loved me and loved their mom, and that was really all that mattered. Leah asked me why I didn't love her mother, and I wanted to be as honest as I could. But I didn't think there was a way to explain it in a way that was appropriate for her age. I couldn't bring myself to tell her that her mom was completely out of her mind. The best I could do was say that her mom had lied to me and hurt me. Leah hugged me to try to console me, and it nearly broke my heart because there were so many things she didn't know yet. Daniel asked me what was going to happen with the divorce, and I told them they would live with me during the week, and I would look after them in our home. I explained that the court would decide which weekends they would spend at their grandparents' house with their mom. I promised them that their mother and I would keep our arguments between us from that point forward. I also told them that Sylvia and I had a long conversation the night before, after they got home. Leah said she wanted her mom to come back and live with us. It hurt to tell her that it would never happen, not under any circumstances, but I had to be honest. She said that her mommy had said she wanted to come back and live with us. I looked her in the eye and told her that I was sure her mom would want that, but it was impossible. I told them both that at the moment, they weren't old enough to fully understand, but one day I would explain exactly why I felt her mom didn't deserve to live with us anymore. Leah seemed to accept that more than Daniel. He started asking how old he had to be to know what his mom had done. When I told him that it wasn't about age, but about maturity, he called it a cop-out. I didn't argue with him. I told them both that I wanted them to love their mom and treat her with respect because, from their perspective, she hadn't done anything wrong to them. I promised them that when they were old enough, I would tell them the truth. I would leave them letters in my will if I had to, just in case something happened to me. I would tell them myself when they were ready, even though I knew it would affect their opinion of her. I have a feeling they'll soon see a side of their mother that will reveal much of the truth. One day, they'll know what she did to all of us, but we stuck together and built a decent life despite being her 3 biggest victims. I can't pretend to care about her in front of them, acting like she means anything to me. She's repulsive in every way, and if she died, I wouldn't shed a single tear. She deserves whatever hell is waiting for her. I hate her for what she's done to me and the kids. I hate her for what she's allowed herself to become and for the stress and pain she's caused our families. She deserves no forgiveness, no second chances, and certainly no compassion. When I heard about her injuries in the wreck, I didn't consider them karma. To me, it was just pain and suffering. She deserved much worse than what she got. I heard through the kids that she was having pins removed from her shoulder the next day, and while I didn't tell them, I couldn't help but hope they used a strong electromagnet to do it. It was hard to not feel that way. A few weeks after our conversation, the kids came home from their grandparents' house with a letter for me. It was sealed in an envelope with my name on it. I couldn't throw it away in front of them, so I just set it on the counter with the junk mail. Later, after I had gotten them to bed, I decided to read it. Sylvia started the letter by apologizing for hurting me. She claimed she never meant for things to get as bad as they did, that she had forgotten who she was and what she wanted to be. She apologized for hurting the kids, and as much as I despise her, I had to give her some credit for that. If she'd stopped there, I might have found some small amount of respect for her. But then she went on to say that she still loved me with all her heart, that she always had and always would. I wanted to laugh because I knew she truly believed the nonsense she was writing. That was what made it so absurd. But as I continued reading, she claimed that was why she didn't want to develop feelings for any other man, that her heart still belonged to me. I had to hold back a laugh. If she truly loved me, how could she have done something so incredibly hurtful? She went on to say that giving her body to other men allowed her to feel young and free, without the weight of responsibility and commitment, since she never got to experience that before. She justified her actions by saying that she never formed any emotional connections with the men she slept with, which somehow meant her heart was still exclusively mine. She meant to say this in a positive light, but the only way I could rationalize it was by calling it the twisted thinking of someone who truly believed their own delusions. By cutting off all communication with Sylvia, I shielded myself from more of her madness. It was something I needed to do for my own mental well-being. But by doing so, I also cut myself off from fully understanding the depths of her depravity, both mentally and physically. Since D-Day, I've thought countless times that I never truly knew her. But after reading that letter, I realized she never truly knew me either. She wasn't even trying to provoke me. I could tell from the way she wrote it. Her words seemed to imply that her actions, though deeply hurtful, were somehow the lesser of two evils. Her lack of emotional attachment to other men, in her mind, preserved her heart for me. That was her justification. I get that finding out your partner has had an emotional affair can be crushing, but no one contracts STDs from an emotional affair. No one gets physically hurt over texts or phone calls, and no one gets pregnant in an emotional affair. I would have much rather she had thousands of emotional affairs than let anything become physical. The fact that she doesn't understand this about me screams that she never really knew me. She chose what she thought was the lesser evil, but she never knew me well enough to realize how I felt about it. I've read a lot of online posts from others in similar situations, and I've yet to come across anyone whose partner claimed their affairs were never emotional. That's essentially what she's claiming. But she doesn't get that by saying that. She's admitting to living the past 6 years of her life like an uninvolved, hedonistic animal, acting on her sexual impulses without control. She knew her actions were wrong, yet she somehow found a way to justify them, even felt validated by them. Before that letter, I had little insight into how she viewed what she did. But reading it removed any remaining attraction I had for her. The more I learned about her choices, the texts, the pictures, the videos, the more shattered my psyche became. It was bad enough when I caught her with just one random guy, but when she admitted to having affairs with enough men to fill a whole ship, and then I saw the recovered messages and videos from her old phone, that was a breaking point for me. It felt like I had been married to an adult film actress for 6 years. I have a lot of sympathy for anyone who discovers their partner had a one-night stand, and my heart breaks for those who find out their significant other had an affair. But I can't begin to describe the pain of knowing that the person I loved was being degraded, treated like the lowest hooker in ancient Rome, and actually enjoying it. I can no longer picture Sylvia in my mind without imagining the worst, and that's how deeply disgusted I feel by her. The emotional bond we shared could never have erased the horror I now feel toward her. In an instant, she went from someone I loved to someone I viewed as utterly unworthy. The day I filed for divorce, it felt like everything changed. At noon, I filed the paperwork, and just 10 minutes later, a sheriff's deputy showed up at her parents' house to serve her with the papers. Another deputy arrived shortly after with the civil suit I had filed against her. Calls and texts from her family went unanswered, and my lawyer urged me to stay the course and let her get her own counsel. She didn't want to hear that. I heard she screamed and yelled at the staff, but eventually, her lawyer was informed that the divorce would proceed whether she liked it or not, and any further harassment would have severe consequences. Honestly, I almost wish she'd pushed harder. She wasn't suited for the consequences that would follow. Over a week later, her lawyer contacted Talia to discuss the civil suit. He asked if we were serious about recovering the costs of raising a child that wasn't mine. Talia assured him we were, but also made it clear that this wasn't about money. Even if I win, I probably won't see much, if any, of the court's ruling. But if I win, it would mean a significant portion of her income would be taken until the full amount is paid. It would serve as a constant reminder of what she did, a punishment that would last. And even if I lose, she'll still have to pay a lawyer, which she can't afford. The majority of our assets, including the family home, were mine before we ever got married. But her lawyer insisted we couldn't expect full custody of both kids or for Sylvia to pay child support while receiving no spousal support. Talia told him that Sylvia had been unfaithful long before the accident, and getting caught was the worst timing for her. Our goal wasn't just to win. It was to make her suffer. The only valuable thing in her name was her car, and she could keep it. Her retirement savings were hers to keep, too, since my financial portfolio was far bigger than hers. She wouldn't even have had that 401k without my urging, and she never had to contribute to utilities. Her only real expenses were her car and insurance. Everything else was hers to keep. Now, she's left to live off that. I know she's already feeling the financial strain, and it's only going to get worse for her. If I win the civil suit, she'll be in a tight spot financially, and I'm sure it'll affect her work. As for the car, I drove it for a few months after my own car was wrecked. Adding mileage to it was petty, but satisfying. Eventually, I bought a new SUV, and I had a friend follow me as I drove Sylvia's car to her parents' house. I left the key in the mailbox, knowing that, given her history, she would probably be out looking for new men to sleep with as soon as she was able to. I hoped that living with her parents was giving Sylvia a sense of freedom, but having random men come stay over at their house was tacky and just made everything worse. Eventually, she'd need a more respectable place to offer herself to strangers, maybe a 2020 Acura. I even thought about donating her car to a local criminal justice program, where students would become experts in the use of luminol before they even became real police officers. As twisted as it sounds, what was most satisfying about returning her car was the fact that it didn't have a spare tire. It never did, and that was something I'd warned her about when she asked my opinion on buying it. I remember her sweetly telling me she had made a plan for if she ever got a flat. I almost left a note under the trunk mat, something like, "Bet you wish you had a spare now," but I figured she'd figure it out eventually. A few days after our lawyers communicated, they arranged an in-person meeting to discuss matters. Her side requested a discussion about Leah, and although I was reluctant, I agreed for Leah's sake. We met at Talia's office, and I waited in the main conference room. When Talia entered with Sylvia and her lawyer, I almost didn't recognize her. She appeared exhausted and worn down, as though the stress of recent months had taken a visible toll on her. At first, I thought my eyes might be deceiving me, but when Talia glanced at me, I realized I wasn't imagining it. Sylvia had lost so much weight, her face now slightly hollowed out. She had never been overweight, but now she looked almost unrecognizable. Her hair was cut in a Karen style, unwashed and messy, and she had clearly seen better days. I'm sure she had her clothes returned, but nothing she wore could make her look good. The two lawyers discussed a few points to start the meeting, but I could feel Sylvia's eyes on me. I didn't want to look at her, but when I finally did, I couldn't believe how much she'd changed. The beautiful woman I once knew seemed to have vanished, replaced by someone who looked as though they'd given up. She had gone from beautiful to looking like a bag lady in just 6 months. I tried to push her from my mind as we moved on to discussing Leah. They asked if I had made any attempts to find Leah's biological father yet, and I told them I wouldn't pursue that until the divorce and custody matters were fully settled. Then I asked if Sylvia remembered any names from that time that might help us find baby daddy number 2. She didn't like the question, but I didn't sugarcoat it. She said no names came to mind, so I asked if she intended to block me from adopting Leah. She said she wished I had never removed my name in the first place, and certainly wouldn't try to stop me from putting it back. Just as I thought the meeting was over, Sylvia asked if I could have forgiven her and taken her back if she confessed to her mistake and promised never to stray again. I knew this was the question she'd asked herself countless times since the betrayal, and I knew the answer. Her asking it was her way of making a statement. She knew that giving herself to anyone else in my eyes was something I would never accept. We had discussed infidelity in the past, and I had made it clear that if I ever found out she cheated, I wouldn't listen to anything she had to say. There would be no second chances, no excuses, just an immediate end. After a long silence, I finally told her that she already knew my answer. I asked her how she would have reacted if I had an affair and brought home a child from it 6 years later. That's when things really got ugly. She said I was trying to hurt her, and I didn't deny it. She claimed that I wasn't her parents and didn't have the right to punish her. I made sure she understood that the divorce was a punishment, and the civil suit was my way of seeking the payback I was owed. She accused me of destroying the kids' lives just to hurt her, and I told her she looked like she had been using meth. That accusation didn't sit well with her, and I had proof to back up what I said. She started crying and telling me she loved me, but I just rolled my eyes. Her tears no longer moved me. They only made me want to treat her even colder. I promised her the kids would always have what they needed, but I made it clear I couldn't care less if she starved or wore rags. There was a time when I would have done anything to make her happy, but now, I asked her what more I could have done to make her stay faithful. She said she betrayed herself. I yelled at her, telling her she betrayed Leah, that she had betrayed everyone who ever cared about her. The lawyers tried to calm things down, and Talia presented a proposed temporary visitation arrangement to help with scheduling doctor's appointments. I made sure Sylvia knew that while I didn't care about her personal life, I didn't want any strange men around the kids. She said she hadn't been with anyone since the separation, but I reminded her she'd said that before. She promised that if she did start dating again, she would keep the kids out of it. I asked her if anyone other than Elena knew the full extent of her unfaithfulness. She admitted that she had only confessed to her sister about the kissing incident after the first time. Elena had freaked out and cursed her out for 5 minutes straight. Sylvia never told anyone else the full truth about the hookups. She asked if there was any chance we could get counseling, but I asked why I would want to work on a marriage with a dead bedroom. She denied that we ever had a dead bedroom, but I told her it was definitely dead now. I would never touch her again after everything that happened. She asked if I hated her. It wasn't exactly a yes or no question, but with every fiber of my being, I had to say yes. That's where things stand now, waiting for the divorce trial to go before a judge. The civil case can't even begin until the divorce is settled. The kids are doing well, considering everything. They get to see both sets of grandparents more often, which is one positive in this mess. I know I need to let go of the hate. I've been seeing a therapist for a while now. It took me some time to find one I liked, and she acknowledges that I have legitimate reasons for feeling the way I do. I'm not the kind to seek validation, but knowing my feelings aren't irrational has been helpful. I know it's not good for me, though. My new therapist is helping me work through my emotions and try to let go of the anger. I'm still not great at meditation. It's new to me. My first therapist was decent at first, but after a few sessions, her tone changed. During one session, she kind of suggested that sometimes we unknowingly hurt or irritate our partners by not speaking up about issues. She implied that the tension we hold in can build up and explode. I didn't agree with her take. I know that despite my faults, nothing I did justified what Sylvia did to me. I didn't deserve that. So, I switched therapists and tried a few sessions with a guy who seemed to understand the feelings of emasculation and the overwhelming nature of what I was going through. I just didn't feel comfortable with him. Thankfully, I'm pretty much cried out now, but if I have to talk about emotional stuff, I'd rather not do it in front of a guy. Guys are for drinking, playing sports, and fighting, not discussing why my wife is emotionally unavailable or doesn't understand his love language. This guy didn't really seem like the right fit for me anyway. Part of me wanted to give him another chance, but I couldn't see us developing any real rapport. If that makes me sexist, then so be it, but I just feel more comfortable confiding in a woman. That's my preference. I finally found a therapist who works for me. She's the only daughter among 3 brothers, so she understands men fairly well. Her specialty is infidelity and grief counseling. When I told her everything that led me to therapy, she went through half a box of tissues. She said she's amazed that I'm doing as well as I am. I'm not sure if that was encouragement or genuine surprise, but it helps to know she's not expecting me to be fine just because I'm not institutionalized. I'll refer to her as Sarah for the sake of this post, but she's been really helpful by just listening. She says I'm difficult to read and that my outward appearance doesn't match my personality. She noted that I use humor to defuse tense situations and disarm people. I joke that it ruins the fun if she calls me out on my BS too soon, but she's starting to figure me out. She says now it's time for me to figure myself out. She's adamant that while she's here to help, rebuilding my life and my sense of self is up to me. I can't just pay someone else to do the work. I'll need to take stock and see how damaged I really am, repair what I can, and cut off what I can't. It's going to hurt even more than I already have, but I have to come to peace with everything I've lost, because it's not coming back. The kids are seeing their own therapist, 40 minutes each, then 40 minutes with all 3 of us twice a week. They're doing great, and the therapy is helping them come to terms with the inevitable. I was a bit concerned about family therapy, given how I feel about their mom, but I've kept silent in the sessions when they express missing her or wishing we were all still together. I thought about showing them on a doll where Sylvia hurt me, but dolls don't have souls. Sometimes I don't feel like I have one either. I've made an effort to be sociable and lean on friends, but with everything I have ahead of me, small talk feels too trivial. I know my friends are probably tired of me venting. I'd be tired of it too. I've tried not to rant, but the betrayal still eats at me. It's always there, in the back of my mind. Then, when we go out for drinks, they start pointing out this girl or that one, as if I don't already know they're conventionally attractive. I have no interest in getting to know them. Unlike my wife, hygiene alone would prevent me from getting involved, even if I had the chance. Let's be clear. None of these women has left a bar suicidal because I didn't want to sleep with them. The lack of interest was mutual. Nobody loses. This experience hasn't just affected the way I look at women. It's changed how I view people in general. I'm second-guessing everyone's identity and sincerity. Before all of this, Sylvia was someone I truly admired. Now, I question everyone in my life, male and female, that I've admired over the years. She hasn't made me a misogynist. She's turned me into a misanthropist. Despite any shame or guilt she feels for what she did, I know she'll move on quickly. The next guy will be easy for her. She'll start eating better, gain some weight, and men will be hitting on her in no time. I'm sure of that. But I can't do that. I won't do that. I already feel filthy inside and out from knowing what other men have done with her. I feel like she's defiled me, like I've been tainted just by being with her. She didn't just kill my desire for her. She killed any desire I had for sex at all. As attractive as she was, Sylvia was it for me. I didn't need to look at other women. What we had felt special to me. Now, beauty doesn't even register. My mind knows better, but my subconscious still associates all women with Sylvia and Elena. That's my struggle, fair or not. Someone recently sent me a supportive message. They said they almost envied me, soon to be single, financially secure, and with no problems meeting women who would perceive me as high value. I thanked them for the support, but didn't share that the thought of that makes me anxious. I know people hook up all the time, and that's their choice, but it's just not for me. More power to them if that's what they want. I value my personal space, and I can't imagine meeting a stranger at a bar or on an app, having a brief conversation, and then jumping into something physical. It amazes me how some people are so comfortable with that. In a world where dating apps and hookup culture are so common, I know my perspective might seem odd. But for me, the idea of being with someone who's done the same thing with others makes it hard to accept. For many people, this hookup lifestyle isn't unusual, and I know it's something that could be tempting for guys if they had the chance. But I couldn't and wouldn't go down that path. The idea of being with someone who's had those experiences doesn't sit well with me. Part of me wonders if Sylvia's infidelity was some sort of test or statement. She knew my stance on things, and it felt like she was making a deliberate choice to hurt and disgust me. It was as if she wanted to destroy any chance of us ever having something real again. If she had just been honest about what happened and we divorced, I might have been able to move forward eventually. But instead, it felt like she was trying to make sure I would never want to be with anyone else. The continued cheating destroyed any chance of that. Even if she tried to erase it with showers or protection, it didn't change the fact that part of her had been shared with someone else. The thought of it makes me sick. When Sylvia and I were together, everything was pure and special. The moment she betrayed me, it was like poisoning everything. It's like taking a perfect glass of milk and putting just a drop of ink in it. At first, it might seem mostly the same, but everything changes in an instant. Instead of being honest with me about the first drop of ink, she kept letting me drink it, adding more ink each time. Now, she's no longer a glass of milk with a drop of ink, but a glass of ink with a drop of milk. It's completely tainted. I can't stand the idea of starting something new with someone else. When Sylvia and I first got together, everything felt natural. We took our time, we learned together, and we grew close gradually. But now, the thought of intimacy with someone new feels impossible, and thinking about Sylvia is just the opposite of what it used to be for me. It's all become overwhelming, and every day I feel more ashamed to be part of the human race. My life was never supposed to turn out this way. We had so many beautiful moments ahead of us as a family, but now those memories are shattered, and those moments will never come to be. At the end of the day, I loved Leah, but I had to let her go because our relationship was forced upon us from the beginning, against our will, through adoption. If given the chance, I would choose her as my daughter again. When the judge asks if she wants me to adopt her, it will be her returning all the love I've given her, completing a full circle of what could have been set right, or as right as possible. I can never truly be her father. Her biological father is out there somewhere, unaware he has a 6-year-old daughter, but I am the only dad she will ever know, her protector and provider long after any legal obligation has ended. I've done what I had to do to keep my sanity intact, even when others questioned my actions or called me cruel. I've done what I thought was necessary to allow Sylvia's 2 biggest victims to stake their claim to what was never truly theirs. I've made mistakes. How I handled everything, I won't know until much later, but I've done my best. I haven't seen or spoken to Elena since that fateful morning. I don't know how prominent she is in Sylvia's life now, and I don't know if they've had any contact. All I know is what my kids have told me, and they haven't mentioned her at all. A few weeks after everything hit the fan, I confided in an old friend about what was going on. I chose him because his wife, a notorious gossip, is also a close friend of mine, and I didn't feel guilty using one of her flaws for my benefit. For those who don't know, Elena owns her own salon, which employs 9 people when fully staffed. Since word spread about what happened, 2 of her stylists have left her salon. I can't say for sure if they left because of her role in my marriage falling apart or for other reasons, but I can hope that my actions might cause her some trouble. When things are finalized, I plan to share the details of her actions widely, and if that affects her business, so be it. I'll wait to see if it brings her any misery. One thing worth mentioning is that I ran into Sylvia's sister, Mandy, at the grocery store. She hugged me and apologized for her sister's stupidity and immorality. Many people would probably have told me to cut all ties with her since she's part of the enemy camp, but I've always liked Mandy and her husband, Doug. So, I invited them over to enjoy the pool with their kids. We grilled, and Doug watched the kids while Mandy and I talked, making sure the conversation didn't get overheard. To make a long story short, Sylvia's family knew about her cheating with multiple men, but Sylvia had lied to them, downplaying the number of her affairs. Mandy had been told there were a couple of short-term affairs after Daniel was born, but when I asked her what she considered a couple, she said 2 or 3. I then showed her the folder containing text exchanges between Sylvia and men she had sexted. As Mandy went through the pages, I explained that we had verified 47 different men that Sylvia had been sexually involved with since Daniel was born. That was just the beginning, as we knew she had arranged many one-night stands via dating apps. Mandy was speechless when she saw the verified body count, and she immediately wanted to call her parents to inform them and curse out her sister. When I told her that no one in Sylvia's family had been informed that I'm not Leah's father, it hit both of us hard. Mandy was furious, and so was I, but neither of us could hold back our anger. Doug had to step in and stop grilling to comfort his wife, who was overwhelmed with tears. Mandy walked over to my side of the picnic table and gave me a hug, repeatedly apologizing. Doug was stunned but gave me a pat on the back after making sure Mandy was okay. He told me we'd go out for drinks later that week. While my soon-to-be ex-wife may be a terrible person, her family and the people married into it seem to be decent. However, I'll continue to be cautious about how much trust one put in them. I filled Mandy in on what had actually happened that morning and how I discovered the paternity results. She was shocked. She even told me she wished I'd punched Elena square in the nose. I asked Mandy about her opinion of Elena, and she told me she never liked her, even when they were kids. Mandy is 4 years older than Sylvia and Elena, and she was a senior when we were freshmen. Mandy recalled catching Elena stealing makeup from her room multiple times, and Elena was unapologetic. She said she disliked Elena because she was always manipulative and loved creating drama. Mandy even tried to be a role model for Elena after her dad divorced her mom, but Elena never listened, and Mandy described her as an ungrateful person. I asked if she knew Sylvia had originally wanted Elena to be her maid of honor. Mandy didn't give a clear answer, but the flood of profanities let me know she had no idea. I filtered in some things that Sylvia had told me in a letter, and Mandy was as shocked by Sylvia's reasoning as anyone. She mentioned that their parents didn't raise them to behave that way. She said Sylvia had claimed she never wanted to be with anyone but me long before high school. I'm not sure if that means Sylvia was deceiving herself all along or if her feelings changed, but I know that if someone truly loves another person, they don't offer their body freely to others. Either the love was never real, or it died long before I realized it. Sylvia had always claimed that her heart belonged to me, but now I know that was a lie, and I wonder if she was even capable of love. Not that it matters anymore. After lunch, the kids kept playing, so I had a chance to talk with Doug and Mandy at length. Mandy filled them in while I went to get ice cream for the kids. When I returned, I saw tears in Doug's eyes, and he gave me a long, brotherly hug before I sat back down. He asked how much damage I'd done to the guy I caught Sylvia with. I told them that when I left, the guy was unconscious, and his lower eyelid on the left side looked like it belonged to a hound dog due to the injury. No police ever contacted me, so I knew his friend hadn't taken him to the authorities, but I was aware his orbital bone fracture would require surgery. I never received a bill for it. Doug said I should have killed the guy. I told him that if Sylvia and Elena hadn't jumped on my back to weigh me down, I probably would have, but I was glad I didn't. Doug then asked if anyone had any idea who Leah's father might be. I explained that Sylvia had slept around with so many men that it was impossible to know, but I told him I'd ramp up the search once all the divorce and civil proceedings were finished. They both expressed relief that Sylvia would be devastated in the divorce, and that therapy for all 3 of us had been helpful. When I mentioned that I was eager for Sylvia to start working again so she could pay child support and any civil fines she might owe, they both laughed. Doug joked that if paternity fraud were a crime, Sylvia would get the death penalty. I told him that Sylvia might as well have committed maternity fraud because any woman who could do what she did wasn't a mother at all. About an hour after they left, my phone started blowing up with calls and texts. The caller ID showed that both of Sylvia's parents were reaching out, along with several unknown numbers. Then Mandy called, and I answered. I could hear her, but there was a lot of screaming and yelling in the background. She stepped outside to tell me that she had filled her parents in on the whole truth. Her dad was busy throwing Sylvia's things into her car, and her mom was crying, telling her how much of a disappointment Sylvia had become and how ashamed they were to have raised such a person. I could hear Sylvia crying and pleading that she had nowhere to go, but instead of gloating, I felt like she was getting some of what she deserved. I thought about the kids. I had no problem with Leah and Daniel staying at their grandparents' house, but anywhere else that Sylvia might go was off limits. If she went to Elena's, there was no way I'd let them be around her. I didn't trust Elena, and I couldn't risk the kids being exposed to any situation that might not be safe. Even if Sylvia somehow managed to get a hotel room, I doubted she would refrain from having someone else stay over, and I couldn't take that risk. It was good that her family knew part of the truth, but I knew it would create some complications when it came to visitation. If Sylvia didn't find a stable and safe place to live, the court wouldn't allow her to have unsupervised visits. It would hurt only seeing the kids for a couple of hours every other weekend, but that was a consequence of the mess she created for herself. I didn't care if she ended up in a shelter or worse. It was her doing. While I was still on the phone with Mandy, I heard Sylvia come outside and ask if I was on the phone. Mandy asked me what she should say, and I probably shouldn't have said the truth, but Sylvia grabbed the phone and started pleading. She asked why I was so focused on ruining her life, and I replied simply that she had ruined mine. She tried to convince me that if I forgave her, I could get my life back. I told her that life was gone and never really existed because of her lies. She swore she loved me, but I told her the only thing she truly loved was herself, and I wasn't buying it. She insisted none of the others meant anything to her, but I told her if that was true, she wouldn't have risked everything, her family, her security, for those meaningless encounters. She asked why I had told her sister and parents everything, and I pointed out that she hadn't told them the truth about me, not about the affair or about not being Leah's father. She cursed at me, but I just responded that I was Leah's father and always would be, but she should have told her family the truth. When she said her parents were kicking her out, I told her I'd heard that and was happy to hear it. I made it clear I would do everything I could to make things even worse for her. She kept saying she loved me and asking why I could be so cruel. I told her she should have been asking herself that 6 years ago. I knew she regretted it now, but she was losing everything, and now the truth was coming out. What she was experiencing from her family was exactly what she deserved. 3 days later, Talia called. Sylvia's lawyer wanted to set up another meeting, so we arranged it for Friday at Talia's office. I really didn't want to see Sylvia or talk to her, but I knew that her being essentially homeless would affect custody decisions. As soon as we sat down, her lawyer informed me that Sylvia had been living in her car since her parents kicked her out. I asked why she didn't go to Elena's, considering that Elena was partly responsible for all this. Sylvia didn't respond. Sylvia's lawyer then asked if there was any possibility that I'd let her come home or if we could try marriage counseling. I told her to ask her parents if she could go back there, because the house I shared with my children was off limits to her and anyone like her. As for marriage counseling, I told her she could try it with whoever would be stupid enough to marry her next. I was sure she could never be faithful to anyone after everything she'd done. Her lawyer objected to my language, calling it harsh, and I told him he was just a money-grabbing lawyer representing someone who didn't deserve his help. I asked if Sylvia was paying him through OnlyFans, or if she was doing something else to get him to take her case. Talia placed a hand on my shoulder to calm me down, suggesting we take a break and try to keep things civil. I agreed, needing a moment to cool off before I launched my next round of insults. We took a 20-minute break, and I stepped out to my car just to get away from the tension. As I sat there, I briefly thought about scratching "Home Sweet Home" into the hood of Sylvia's car with my key, but I quickly realized I was on camera and didn't need any more trouble with lawyers. I could see the mess inside her car, fast food wrappers on the passenger side, piles of clothes in the back seat. It was a sad sight, but it was her reality now, living the nightmare she'd created for herself and for me. I was trying, with professional help, to let go of the anger, but at that moment, I couldn't see any reason to show her even a shred of respect or decency. Everything about her felt indecent, and I had no patience for it. When I returned to the meeting, Talia encouraged me to keep my answers short, sticking to yes or no when possible. I agreed, though I told her there was only so much I could take of Sylvia's lies and excuses. Talia promised she'd keep the meeting as brief as she could. When we sat back down, I just glared at Sylvia and her lawyer, silently telling them both where they could go. Talia started by asking Sylvia if she had sought therapy for herself. Sylvia claimed she didn't have the time because she was dealing with physical therapy, nor did she have the money since her insurance wouldn't cover it. Talia asked if we paid for it, would Sylvia be willing to attend therapy? My head snapped toward Talia so fast that I thought I might have given myself whiplash. She kicked me under the table, signaling that she had everything under control. Sylvia's lawyer immediately jumped in, saying that Sylvia would only see a therapist of her choosing, no matter who paid for it. Talia acknowledged this but suggested that some therapy might help Sylvia process her emotions, which could make her a better mother down the line. I still thought Talia had lost her mind proposing this, but I let her continue. Sylvia's lawyer insisted they would discuss it and get back to us with an answer later. My own lawyer, a woman, said that despite being on opposing sides, she felt it was important that women in these kinds of situations get the help they need. I'll admit, the way she said it was so convincing that I actually thought my own lawyer had turned on me. Sylvia then asked if we could try family counseling. That's when I kicked Talia under the table again to let her know there was no way in hell I'd agree to that. Talia kicked me back and told them that if Sylvia attended several therapy sessions and the therapist thought family counseling might be beneficial, we could discuss it. I didn't agree with her suggestion, but I trusted that Talia had a reason for bringing it up. I was just frustrated that I wasn't fully prepared for her tactic, though I figured I'd understand her strategy later. When the meeting ended, I asked Sylvia if all the cheap, meaningless sex with strangers was worth it. Was it worth losing everything? The loving husband? The custody of her kids? I asked her if she really enjoyed it, because if she didn't, she wouldn't have kept doing it. I needed to know if those experiences had been worth it, if losing everything was worth it for those fleeting moments. She began to cry, and for a second, I thought her tears were genuine. She said no, it wasn't worth it. I asked if she felt any shame. I knew she regretted getting caught, but I wanted to know if she felt any real shame for what she'd done and for everyone eventually learning about her indiscretions. She claimed she did, especially now that her family knew. I asked if she really thought she could keep the truth hidden from her family forever. She said she'd hoped to, at least until she got a job and a place of her own, but she knew the truth would come out eventually. She apologized for hurting me and said she never wanted to do that. I told her she didn't just hurt me, she destroyed me. Every single day, I felt pain. It wasn't just emotional, it felt physical too. It was in my soul, my joints and muscles. Even Advil couldn't help. My heart was so broken that the pain seeped into my body. On some days, I felt numb. On the bad days, the tension and depression made my body ache. And some mornings I woke up sore for no reason at all. Sylvia cried harder when she saw how deeply her actions had affected me. I told her to tell me what I had done to justify her betraying me so thoroughly, so cruelly. She just cried harder. I asked her what she thought she deserved after everything she'd done. Not what she wanted, but what she truly thought someone who destroyed their own life deserved. And as she began to bawl, I knew the answer to my question. She wasn't ready to face the consequences of her actions. I was done with the tears and the lack of real answers. The meeting ended with Sylvia's lawyer trying to usher her out of the office, while she kept begging me to forgive her. I just kept telling her to leave, to drive home, and that we were done talking. Once they were finally off the premises, I turned to Talia and demanded to know why she suggested I pay for Sylvia to see a therapist. Talia explained that doing so would be seen as a positive gesture by the court. She said Sylvia was clearly unstable and struggling to cope with her life. If a professional were to recommend or even insist on hospitalization for her, well, so be it. In a state like that, it wouldn't be difficult for her to get admitted, even if just overnight. Talia believed that giving Sylvia access to professional help could get her the support she clearly needed, but it might also work in our favor when the court saw how frazzled she had become. I didn't feel any guilt about not being upfront with my intentions. I wasn't interested in helping Sylvia for her sake. If she thought family therapy was part of the deal to get her to see a therapist, so be it. Sylvia was great at digging herself into a deeper hole, and I hoped she'd keep doing so. The divorce was inevitable. After everything that had happened, the lies, the deceit, the affair, it was clear that there was no repairing what had been broken. I couldn't see a way forward with her, not after everything I had discovered. I went to the lawyer, Talia, and started the process. The idea of divorcing Sylvia wasn't something I wanted to do, but there was no other choice. I wasn't going to let her destroy my life any further. In court, it was a battle, but one I had already won in my mind. Sylvia's actions spoke for themselves. When the judge looked at the evidence, the affair, her reckless behavior, the emotional neglect of our children, it was clear that she was not fit to be a parent. I had worked hard to build a stable, loving environment for our kids, and the court saw that. My lawyer, Talia, helped me make sure that the facts were laid bare, and in the end, the decision was made. I was granted full custody of our children. Sylvia wasn't just devastated by the loss of custody. It was as if her whole world crumbled beneath her. The weight of everything she had done hit her all at once. She went into a deep depression, unable to cope with the consequences of her actions. The reality of losing her children, the family she had thrown away for a few moments of fleeting pleasure, became too much for her to handle. She spiraled. It wasn't long before she had a complete breakdown. She was sent to a mental facility for evaluation and treatment. I wasn't sure whether I should feel sorry for her, but the truth was, I didn't. I had spent so many years trying to make things work with her, and now, after everything, I could only feel anger and betrayal. The facility was supposed to help her, but at that point, I realized that nothing would ever truly fix her. She had made her choices, and she would have to live with them. When she was admitted to the mental facility, I thought it would be a temporary escape from the chaos. For her, it was a place where she could retreat from the reality of what she had done, but it was also a place where she could confront it. I could tell she wasn't doing well in there, and while I didn't feel an ounce of sympathy for her, part of me understood that this was a consequence of her own making. The divorce was final, and I was free. The court had made it clear that I was the more stable and responsible parent, and that Sylvia was unfit to care for our children. The relief I felt was overwhelming, but I knew it wasn't over. It wasn't just about the divorce, it was about the aftermath. I had my kids, and I was determined to make sure they never felt the hurt I had endured. The pain of losing my family in such a brutal way never truly left me, but I had to push through it for them. As for Sylvia, I couldn't help but watch from a distance as she tried to piece her life back together. But deep down, I knew it was too late. She had already destroyed everything that mattered, and no amount of therapy or time in a facility would ever fix that. She was lost to her own actions, and there was no coming back from it. After my ex-wife was locked away in the psychiatric hospital, I took control of our lives and adopted our daughter. I divorced her and gained full custody of the kids. When she was released, she was hit hard by the reality of what she had done. She had no rights to her children, and her world had fallen apart. She tried to escape the consequences by running away to Australia, where she met and married a guy, hoping to disappear and never have to deal with her past again. However, things didn't go as smoothly as she hoped. Once she tried to get back into the kids' lives and realized just how much she had lost, the realization hit her like a ton of bricks. She caused a scene when she couldn't see the kids, and it was clear she had no one to blame but herself. The situation escalated to the point where the police had to get involved, and a restraining order was issued to keep her away from the children. Meanwhile, Talia, my lawyer, had been handling the situation, but she started showing interest in me. She admitted to being attracted to me, and when I was dealing with all of this chaos, she confessed that she'd be interested in pursuing something if I ever was. That's when I realized things were shifting. My ex-wife's life, which she had thought she could salvage, was now fully derailed. There were two breakdowns from her that stuck with me. The first came when she fully understood the depth of her mistakes and the mess she had made of everything: her family, her kids, and her life. The second breakdown came when the weight of the future she had thrown away hit her. She knew she had destroyed the potential of a good, stable life with her family, and it was devastating for her to face. As part of her therapy, she joined group discussions, trying to understand why she did what she did. She opened up about her actions and attempted to make sense of the chaos she caused. But the other patients in the group didn't offer her the sympathy or support she might have expected. Instead, they looked at her as if she were completely out of touch, a complete dumb for throwing everything away. I found it ironic and almost poetic, the way she had no choice but to face the truth of what she had done. And it was clear that everyone could see how out of place she was in that world now. At the end of the day, she had no one to blame but herself, and she couldn't run from the truth. She thought she could hide from it all in a foreign country, but the weight of her decisions followed her everywhere. Sylvia's world came crashing down around her in ways she never anticipated. She came from a background of privilege, a life that, compared to the struggles of others, seemed almost too easy. Her upbringing had been cushioned, her problems superficial in comparison to the deep, painful histories others carried. But it wasn't enough to shield her from the consequences of her choices, and she learned that the hard way. When the truth about her past finally hit her, it shattered whatever delusions she had been clinging to. She realized the extent of her mistakes, the irreparable damage she had done to her family, and the relationships she had destroyed. Her first breakdown came when she faced the reality of her past, the choices she had made, and the wreckage left in their wake. That was hard enough, But when the second breakdown came, it was even more devastating. The realization that she had no future, at least not one worth having. All the things she took for granted, her family, her children, the life she once knew, were gone. Her own choices had stolen them from her, and there was no way to reclaim what was lost. The town turned its back on her. People she once knew, people who had been part of her life, no longer wanted anything to do with her. She was left isolated, alone with nothing but the weight of her failures. That's when she decided to leave, fleeing to Australia to seek solace, or perhaps escape, in the arms of a man she had been in contact with. It wasn't clear whether she went there looking for love, redemption, or simply a way out. What was clear, though, was that she was trying to run as far from her past as possible. Australia wasn't like other places. The laws were strict when it came to immigration, and unless she married this man or found a way to get a job that could sponsor her, she wouldn't be able to stay indefinitely. But her situation was complicated. She had been a stay-at-home mom for years with no marketable skills to her name. The reality was, she had no real options. It didn't look good for her, and I couldn't help but wonder what she was going to do to survive. I couldn't help but think about the man she went to see. From everything I knew about her, he didn't seem like the kind of person who would be looking for a partner with the moral integrity to put the past behind her. Given the types of people who frequent certain sites online, I had concerns about him, too. Trade was legal in Australia, and I wouldn't be surprised if she found herself working in that industry to sustain herself while she tried to escape her past. Maybe she'd figured out a way to survive on her own, but I wouldn't trust her judgment, not after everything she had done. Whether she was running to a better life, or simply running away from everything she'd ruined, I couldn't say. What was certain, though, was that her future in Australia, just like her future in the life she left behind, was uncertain at best. It would be interesting to see how it all played out, but it was hard to imagine things turning out well for her, not after everything she had done. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.